This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally. The saints on every hand are shouting victory. Their song the sweetest praise drifts back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
I'll be reading from John chapter 18 and verse 36. Jesus answered, and he said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from this realm." That was John 18:36. Will, you're on.
Thank you. There is a children's service in the nursery. Go through the doors and to your left. If your age is 1 to 5, she might take 6-year-olds, but if you're at least 29 or more, you've got to stay in here with me, whether you like it or not. Good morning, church family.
Good morning.
It's truly wonderful to see all of you here today. I think it's a great thing when the people of Like Precious Faith comes together in order to worship God in spirit and in truth. So thank you for being here with us today as well. I want to touch on some really weird topics today. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything like this from a pulpit before, but I think it could be quite intriguing. And I think it's very needful in the society that we live in today, because these things are discussed throughout the world. And you know, zombies and vampires are not mentioned in the Bible, at least by name. Aliens are, but it's aliens to the Commonwealth of Israel. It's foreigners, not people from home. You know that witches are mentioned in the Bible? Sorcerers are mentioned in the Bible? Soothsayers and prophets are mentioned in the Bible? But why does the Bible leave out zombies and vampires? It can be very interesting. Why is it so prevalent now? Why hasn't it been over the space of time? Well, I'd like to get into a little bit of the educational world to understand this a little bit more clearly. From about the 3rd century AD to about the 20th century AD, you know what the number one book was that was put forth in our educational system? Somebody's holding up the Bible. It is. It was. It's been used throughout most of the world's history as the source of education. And so most people of the world, whether they were Christians or not, knew who God was, knew what God had done, and knew what the religious world was all about. And it's not been until the 20th century that we've taken the Bible out of the mainstream lives of most people. And now they don't have a clue what's in it. So they come up with this idea of the zombie apocalypse. I'd like to really know where the thought originated. Because I don't know. But yet they're preparing for a zombie apocalypse to the point that they're getting their knives, they're getting their guns, they're getting their bullets, they're getting their food ready because they believe it's going to happen. Here's the difference between them and myself. I believe it's already going on. I believe it's here, and I believe it's now. And I think we need to understand it from the point that the Bible puts forth. We'll deal with each of these individually, zombies, vampires, and aliens. And trust me, they all do exist. Let's hit zombies first. What's the difference in being afraid of the zombie apocalypse when you're already a zombie? Do you think the zombies know they're zombies? What is a zombie? Let's get a definition going. A zombie is someone who's upright, walking around, and acting as if they are alive, but there is no life in them at all. They are, by all means, dead. I mean, if Dr. Luke got a stethoscope and put up on their heart, he probably could not find a beating heart at all. But supposedly, they're up walking around, and they're looking for things to feast on, to eat, to make something else what they already are. Doesn't that sound a little bit like vampires too? Well, you get the idea. But where does the Bible talk about zombies? Anyone know? Go to Ephesians chapter 2. It does not name them by the modern English definition of the word, but it does talk about them nonetheless. Ephesians chapter 2. Notice there with me verses 1 through 4, and Paul is going to be putting it forward as in the past tense. But listen to what he really says was going on in the past tense of these people's lives, and understand these people were living about 2,000 years ago. And you, we can still put that in the form of us too today, can we not? And you, hath he quickened or made alive? If he made us alive, what were we? You were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past, in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But God, who is rich in his mercy, for his great love wherein he has loved us. Verse 5, even when we were dead in sin, he quickened us together, or he made us alive. So we who have been buried in a watery grave of baptism, we who have been operated on by the hand of God in that baptism, have been, technically speaking, made alive. Living, breathing creatures, living and breathing with the Spirit of God. Now the question is, what were we before we were made alive by God? And the answer, according to the Bible, we were dead. Were we up walking around? Oh yeah. Were we eating and feasting on things? Oh yeah. Enjoying life to its fullest, right? But by all technicalities, the way Paul was talking and the way the definition of the word is today, we were zombies. Now let's ask the question, who's the zombies today? Anybody that's not in Christ alive. What does that do with the rest of the world? For the majority of the time since about the 3rd century, the majority of the population has been Christians, or at least claim to be Christians. The majority of the population today does not claim to be Christians. So I'm here to say we are in the zombie apocalypse now. And is the world trying to get us who are alive to start acting like them? Oh, most definitely. Is Satan tempting us with the lust of the flesh to walk according to the desires of this world? Oh, most certainly. They're trying to feast on us because we are the ones that are alive. Look at point number 1. Anyone who has not allowed God to make them alive spiritually is currently a zombie, according to the definitions that I have put forth. Now think about it. There is a large amount of commercialization going on about this zombie apocalypse that is supposed to happen. You can see in the background the picture, it's a zombie survival kit. And you can literally buy these things. Some of them contain guns, some of them contain machetes, and some of them contain other types of knives. But I want us to understand they also contain a manual, a guide, a book on how to win the zombie apocalypse. I'm going to give us that a little bit later on what is the true manual for understanding the zombie apocalypse. But I want to take your minds back to the Garden of Eden. When God made Adam and Eve, and He made them whole, He made them alive, and He made them in Him. But He gave them that one rule. Don't eat of that tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat, you will surely die. Satan twisted a little bit, didn't he? Oh no, you're not going to die. And we can read the scripture for ourselves. Did they die a physical death that day? Absolutely not. They died a spiritual death that day. So not only are they the parents to all who live, they're also the parents to the zombie apocalypse that is going on today. Turn with me to 2 Peter chapter 2. The main topic of 2 Peter chapter 2 is false prophets or false teachers. I have to put them in this concept of zombie land as well. But there's something I want us to see in verse 3. Now the whole chapter talks about the characteristics of the attitudes of false prophets, which we are now calling zombies. But look, verse 3. And through covetous shall they with vain words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. That phrase, make merchandise of you. I know false teachers do that. We can see the tele-evangelists begging for people to send their money to them, can't we? Making merchandise of the people. I'm going to tell you a bunch of lies that make you feel good, and you send me your money, tell me how good you feel good about it. It's making merchandise of us. I think the same phrase can be rendered feasting on us. Maybe they don't come and suck out our brain and actually eat it, but they are trying to suck out our life and feast upon the goodness that we have and turn our life into evil as well. Again, I'll give you the Surviving Zombie Apocalypse book that you need to know closer to the end of the sermon. However, let's move on to vampires. Anybody like vampires? There's a commonality between zombies and vampires, especially if you watch the movie with Will Smith called Legend. If you've seen that, the zombies like to hide in the dark. They don't come out during the day. He gets to roam the streets of New York freely all day long. But come night, he better be in his cage and locked away if he's going to remain safe. Zombies like the dark. We always knew vampires did we not? Oh, they do. They can't come out into the sun because the sun burns them. It scorches their skin and it makes them hurt. Now, I want to play with the word sun just a little bit, with the word light as well, because light can hurt just as much. But where's the idea of vampires mentioned in the Bible? Turn with me to Gospel account of John, chapter 1. Gospel account of John, chapter 1. You're probably all familiar with the first few verses here, and I think they're very profound. They're telling us a lot about Jesus and the powers that Jesus have, or who Jesus really was. First verse, in the beginning was the Word. Notice, if you will, in your Bible, that word "word" is capitalized. We don't typically capitalize the word "word," do we? Unless we're putting it at the first of a sentence, but in the middle of a sentence, it's not capitalized. Anytime a word is capitalized in the middle of a sentence, it's got to be a title or a proper name, does it not? John, when he wrote this, put the word "word" as a proper name. He's referring to a person, an entity. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Now, if you'll turn over to verse 14, it describes who this word "word" is, and I know you already know. The Word was made flesh, and He dwelt among us. So this word "word" is really a title for Jesus. Go back to verse 3. Verse 3, all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. What did God first create? And I know your answer is going to be, He created the heavens and the earth. And I think that first verse is an overall summary. Yes, He created the heavens and the earth. But the first day, God said, "Let there be light." Now, we often get confused and even amused at what this word "light" means that He created on the first day. Some say it was just an expansive light that went throughout the universe. You know, scientists have calculated the length of the universe by measuring the speed of light over distance. And for Arcturus to get its light to Earth, that had to take millions and millions of years. God created a light that went throughout the whole universe instantaneously. We no longer need that millions and millions and millions of years for it to get there. It's already there. Another thing, what if the word "light" is not light at all? What if it's truth? God created truth on that first day and put it together. It says the things in the Bible was in God's mind before He ever wrote them down on paper for us to actually read. Now, we can guesstimate what that light was that He created on the first day, but I think since John wrote, "In the beginning was the Word," that he's taken the word "light" from the beginning too, and whatever God created that day, He's talking about here. He says in verse 5, "The light shineth in darkness." Notice the next phrase, "The darkness comprehended it not." Have you ever been in a dark place where you can't see your hand in front of your face? Go to Beckley, West Virginia. They have a underground mine that is open up for people to take tours through. They'll take you so far in, and they will turn all the lights out. And it is pitch black. Seneca Caverns, Luray Caverns up in Virginia. We can name a few other places where you can go to the place that is so dark that you can't see your hand in front of your face. What's really interesting is they tell you not to move. Why would they tell you not to move? Don't want to hurt yourself or bump into something else or bump into somebody else. Don't want to get hurt during that time. But what if the lights went out while you were in there and you had to feel your way out? It would not be easy, would it? And the more it goes on, my daughter's like, "Yeah, let's go do it." The more that it goes on, the more scared you would be in your mind of what all could happen. Now think about this. Somebody walks in with a flashlight. What would you do? Go towards the light, right? Most people with common sense, that's what they would do. They would go towards the light. But would a vampire go towards the light? No. They're going to run away from the light. They're going to stay away from the light because they don't understand the light. The light is scary to them. It'll hurt them. And that's the idea of where we're going with vampires. Do you know people that you cannot talk Bible talk to? Sorry, I don't want to hear that. I don't know what you want to say. I don't care what you want to say. Just take it to somebody else. There are people that are like that. They don't want to know the Bible. They don't want to know reality. They don't want to know truth. They don't want to know anything about God. They run into the darkness, as far into the darkness as they get, and they hide. It says they cannot comprehend it. They don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to them. They run away from it. I had a Greek teacher to give me the Greek concept of the word, and it's like you're falling off of a cliff. And somebody throws a rope down to you, and all you have to do is grab a hold. Why are you throwing a rope down to me? That doesn't make sense at all. Is the idea of the mindset of the people that doesn't want anything to do with it. So vampires, they run away from the light because they want nothing to do with it. Point number 2. Those living in darkness, and darkness is a word for sin. Those living in darkness cannot understand, nor can they enter the light. Can they be saved? Yeah, but it's going to take some workings of God. It's going to take time, it's going to take patience, it's going to take love, and it's going to take effort, and it's going to take work. But the Bible can change people's hearts. It says it can melt hearts of stone, recreate people in the image of God. But on the surface, if a person is just given the opportunity, they don't understand what God is trying to do. And every time, they will run away from it. Vampires, scared of the light. Look at 1 John chapter 1. And I think this is something that we need to understand as well, as if we are Christians. We talked this morning in Bible class that once people become Christians, there are expectations that are placed upon them. And John gives us one here, and I really believe with this idea of light, he's tying back to John chapter 1 where we just read from. But 1 John chapter 1, look at verses 6 and 7. If we say that we have fellowship with him, and the him being Jesus or God, and we walk in darkness, we lie. We do not do the truth. Verse 7. And if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. Do we want to be cleansed from all sin? Do we want to come out of the darkness? Well, we've got to find this light, and we've got to walk in this light. As much as lieth within us, we've got to be in this light. I know some Christians who like to play with the light and the darkness. Oh, let me have darkness over here Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, got to go to the lights. You get what I mean? We play with worldly things when we think we can get away with it, and then we run over to God when we think there's a safety net that's been put out there. We can't do both. That's verse 6. If we say we have fellowship with him, we better be walking in his light, and that can be the light of truth that he has given unto us. So zombies and vampires, I hope you're not one of them today. Let's for a brief moment talk about saints and sinners. Saints and sinners. Turn with me back to 2 Peter chapter 2. That's not just 2 pages back from 1 John, if you will. I want us to understand a concept that Peter's also bringing out here that I think we need to really, really think about and dig deep into understanding. Verse 14, again, he's talking about false teachers and how they cannot quit what they are doing, but I think it goes across the board to sinners who are so entwined in the sin that they are in. Verse 14, having eyes full of adultery. I mean, is that the same as eye candy? Eye candy is a modern word today. Anybody seen eye candy or heard of eye candy before? You know what eye candy is. You got Dave. I mean, he's 44 in the back, and he's heard of it. Eye candy is that which is pleasing to the eyes, that which looks good to the eyes. When I see it, I want it. That gets into covetousness, doesn't it? That gets into desires of fleshly things, does it not? Having, verse 14, eyes full of adultery, they cannot cease from sin. They beguile unstable souls, and heart they have exercised with covetous practice. They are cursed children. That's hard. That's heavy, is it not? They cannot cease from sin. You take a person that enjoys a particular sin, and you let them practice that, and practice that, and practice that, that becomes a part of who they are. Pretty soon, they can do those activities without even thinking about it, or realizing that's what they are doing. They become so ingrained into the sin that it becomes a part of who they are. And Peter's taking it to the nth degree. Now, let's be clear. Can they be saved? The avenue of salvation has been paved. The road to salvation is laid. And if anybody is willing to break ties with sin and to come to God on God's terms, salvation can be acquired. But Peter is saying here that the chances of that happening are slim to none once a person gets to this depth in their sin. Turn with me to 2 Chronicles. I think God answers the question for us very clearly in this book of 2 Chronicles. There's one passage, and I know you've heard it before. Some of you have probably even quoted it several times. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 14. If my people, it's not me, it's God and His. If God's people who are called by His name, and I understand that when this was written, it was written to the Jews, Israel, who were called by God's name, but can it apply today? Absolutely, because we are called Christians after the name of Christ. If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. God is placing certain expectations upon the people who are called by His name. And if we are willing to meet Him halfway through these expectations, then He tells us what all He is willing to do for us. Heal our land, forgive our sin, hear us from heaven, and ultimately save our souls. Where do we get the information about God, about Jesus, about salvation? Now, let me give you the ultimate survival guide to zombies and apocalypse, or zombies and vampires. Point number 3. The ultimate survival guide to the vampire and zombie apocalypse is the one book that reveals the truth about the alien world. Ooh. The ultimate survival guide to the vampire and zombie apocalypse is the one book that reveals the truth about the alien world. It's interesting, the word alien. It does mean not from here. When news talks about illegal aliens, well, they're not from America, they're coming in from another country. But when we start talking about this idea of aliens not of this world, then we've got to be talking about creatures or entities from another planet, right? Well, maybe not another planet, but let's just conclude not from this planet, right? How many of you saw the movie Alien with Sigourney Weaver? You got an alien from another world, right? And how many of you saw the movie Aliens Tied to Predator? I think it's an interesting twist. You first have an alien that comes to Earth that tries to kill Earthlings, and then you have another alien that comes to Earth to try to kill the aliens that are killing the Earthlings. We find it humorous and we find it funny, but do you know how much is based on truth? Let's think about it from this perspective. is God from this world? No. He's separate and apart from this world, isn't he? Is Satan from this world? No. Demons, Satan, angels, Jesus, God, and all the heavenly hosts are not from this world. So we can categorize them under the alien word definition right now. Humor me if you will. Don't get up and walk out. Think about this. If demons and Satan are an alien race, not from this world, did they come into this world to destroy the people of this world? Absolutely. God, angels, and Jesus are not from this world. Did they come into this world to overthrow Satan and to save the people of this world? Yes, they did. Interesting how aliens and Predator movie writers and directors get it, but sometimes we completely miss it. Turn with, if you will, to John chapter 18. Let's talk about aliens for just a minute. And we've got to see where we fit into all this before it's all over. Are we a zombie? Are we a vampire? Or do we want to be an alien? John 18:36. I appreciate our brother who read this a little bit ago for us. But Jesus makes a very clear distinction here. And he's talking to Pilate just before he's being put to death. He says, my kingdom is not of this world. What's Jesus saying there? Is Jesus referring to himself as an alien? He's not from this world. His kingdom is not from this world. He says, if my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight. Pilate would have no power to kill Jesus if Jesus wanted his kingdom of this world. His servants would fight and overthrow all of them. But Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world, that I should not be delivered to your hands, but now is my kingdom not from thence. He's telling us, by the definition that we use today, that he is an alien force that came into this world to perform a certain work, to do a certain duty, and that was to pave the way of salvation for us. And I think he's made salvation possible for us. If you will, turn with me to Colossians chapter 2. Verse 8 is going to hit me hard with the sermon as it has been presented so far. But I think you might find a little humor in it as well. Colossians 2, verses 8 through 13. Beware lest any of man spoil you through philosophy or vain deceit, after the traditions of the men and the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Am I not guilty of some of that today? For humor's sake. However, verse 9, in him, that is Jesus, dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. I want us to understand that. When Jesus came into this world in the flesh, he brought the entirety of the alien world of heaven with him, all of the Godhead, and dwelled him fully in the human form. And we, verse 10, are complete in him, which is the head of all the principalities and power, in whom also you are circumcised with the circumcision made without hands, in the putting off of the body of the sins of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. Verse 12, buried with him in baptism, wherein you are also risen with him through the faith of the operation of God, who hath raised him from the dead, and us, being dead in our sins, with the uncircumcision of our flesh, hath he quickened together with him, having forgiven us all of our trespasses. He can make us, if we're zombies or vampires, alive in him. He brought that power to the earth to be able to create such entities within us. So we've got a choice. We can be the zombies that act like the rest of the world and can care less about God and His ways. We can be like the vampires that run away from the truth and hide whenever the name of God is mentioned. Or we can become an alien like Jesus. He wants us to become alive. He wants to make us alive. And He wants us to be taken home to be with Him. Remember, what was the song we just sang? This world is not my home. I might be from here, but here is not where I'm meant to be. We can all say that together. And He's paved the way for us to go to a better place. But again, it's our choice whether we go there. He kindly leaves that up to us. Point number 4. God has stepped out of His dimension. We talk about different worlds as being different dimensions. And God's in a different dimension, one that we cannot see with the physical eye, one that we cannot really understand with the physical mind. It has to be from the spiritual side and the spiritual understanding. But God has stepped out of His dimension, and He stepped down into the land of the zombies and vampires to provide resurrection and cleansing. We can have this cleansing. We can have this resurrection. He's made it possible. And understand, He did the hard part of dying that cruel death upon the tree of Calvary to pay the price of our sins. We can't pay that price. We don't even deserve to have it done. But He's done it just the same, so that we can love Him, we can follow Him, and He can take us home to be with Him in heaven. I know there's no one in their right mind that wants to go to a place called hell that burns with fire and brimstone constantly. I know we don't want to go there. But does choosing not to believe in that world make that world any less real? Absolutely not. So we've got to decide not whether heaven and hell are real or not, but which one we want to go to and what we have to do in order to get there. And I believe we've got to be serious about that. I can crack jokes about vampires and zombies all day long, but unless they're coming to the realization of salvation, I can't help them at all. But you have a choice today. We're going to sing an invitation song. If you have any need to respond to the gospel call, to be baptized, to be saved, or to have the prayers or the encouragement of the church, let us know how we can help as together we stand and sing.
There's a fountain free just for you and me. Let us haste, oh haste to the free. 'Tis the fount of love from the source above, and He bids us all freely bring. Will you come? Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty soul, hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all. There's a living stream with a crystal gleam. From the throne of life now it flows. While the waters roll, let the weary soul hear the call that forth freely goes. Will you come? Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty soul. Thirsty soul, hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all. There's a rock that's wet and no soul is left, and did not its pure water share. 'Tis for you and me, and its stream I see. Let us hasten joyfully there. Thirsty soul, hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all.
Like we continue to pray for those that were mentioned on the prayer list this morning. We'll have another service tonight at 6 o'clock. It's our third Sunday, so we'll have a short